we just pop on a small amount of UV resin. We just flatten that out. You can easily cut it into strips, dividers. These tabs are going to hold my resin in place. Right, we are back with another Resin Art experiment. So, I saw a reel recently. This resin artist basically creates paper from UV resin, and they create these incredible origami pieces. Now, I kind of just want to see what else we can do with this. I mean, I had a go yesterday, and I posted a video on a different platform, and it is absolutely rocketing. So I'm going to share that with you today, but I'm going to show you this is absolutely incredible, and I think that we could work together to come up with some really good ideas for this stuff. I mean, look at this. It looks like paper. It's obviously more transparent than normal paper, but it's super thin, and you can fold it like paper. You can can you see my brain is working overtime with this? But I'm going to quickly show you how I made it. So I've just got this stuff, baking paper, greaseproof, non-stick. I don't know what it's called elsewhere, but in the UK it's just called that. So I mean, this is a 10-meter roll, so I've got quite a large amount. So we just tear off a section of that. Doesn't have to be perfect. And then I'm just going to make a fold like so. You can do this as big or as small as you want. Then we just pop on a small amount of UV resin, not much at all, and then we fold that. And then using something, you could use a credit card if you want. I've just got this tool. I don't know what it is. What is it? It came with a stencil kit from Let's Resin. We just flatten that out evenly if possible. Now, the thinner the sheet, the more flexibility it has. The thicker, it's more prone to snapping if you're trying to bend it. That's it. And then we just cure that. It cures super fast as well. I'm just going to cure that for a minute under the beast. So once that has cured, you can't even see it. It's like it becomes one with the paper. But trust me, it's there. See that? We just peel that away from the baking paper, and we're left with this resin paper, really thin. I mean, it's strong. It does tear, almost like a paper does, but you could make a big sheet of this. You can easily, let me get some black cards so you can see it better. You can easily cut this with scissors. Static, get off. You can easily cut it into strips, shapes. I mean, my brain last night has been thinking about so many different things that we could do with this. I'm wondering if I could laser it and create stencils if I was to make it slightly thicker. I'm thinking we could colour this before we spread it inside the paper to make coloured film to, you know, it's going to be pretty endless. So I'm going to show you something that I tried yesterday using this stuff, and like I said, the video's going crazy at the moment on a different platform. I mean, just to show you quickly with that piece that I just had, I folded it and folded it again. So the potential of making stuff from this is going to be huge. What I'll do, I can't pronounce the name of the artist. I think they're Chinese or Japanese. I'll pop a link in the description, and you might be inspired to go and try different things with this when you see their content. It's absolutely incredible. So my initial thought yesterday when I was playing with this, I just sat here and I was kind of just studying it and thinking of what this could be useful for. And I just dripped some UV resin onto the sheet of paper and cured it with my torch just to see. Obviously I knew it would bond, I knew that wouldn't be an issue, but I wanted to see if the paper would become transparent again. So I cured the resin blob on one side, and of course it's still keeping its texture, but when you flip it over and you surround the paper with UV resin, see that it becomes one with the resin, like a window. So that then got me thinking, oh, so could we use this as some kind of a tool in our resin art? And see that? Just becomes like a normal suspended blob of resin. So what I then thought, like I just said, could we cut this and use it as kind of like a barrier? So I know there are other ways of doing this. People have got their own ways, but I think this is really, really handy. Say you make keychains, for example, and you want to use a multiple array of colors in, say, this O. What we can do is we can cut the film or paper to the width of the O. I'm only going to do this as a rough. It's not going to fit first time. If it does, it would be incredible. As long as it's square to the shape and to the bottom. What we could use these for, let me take you down, is dividers. So that when we insert our colours, they're not going to merge, and we can have more control. So I could insert different dividers, more dividers if I wanted to, and separate the colours. Now, obviously I use UV resin a lot more than what I did epoxy. So you've got less risk of any issues of, you know, say one of these doesn't fit perfectly snug. I can cure it quick enough that they're not going to, you know, seep through any of the sides. If you're doing this with epoxy, I think it would work, but you would potentially need to wait for your epoxy to thicken a little bit before you pour them in. But these would still become transparent within the epoxy. So I've just mixed up some nail powder just to show you for the video. Now, if you are worried that there could be an issue when you're pouring your colours, again, these things are going to be really, really handy. Just a handheld UV torch. So what I can do is I can pour my colour in there and then quickly, if I needed to, blast, and the UV light will go through the paper and just completely block the resin from being able to seep through. So I've only tried this once, and that was yesterday, and I poured 2 colours at the same time. Today I'm going to be a little bit more braver. Why does that sound wrong? Braver. I don't know. I'm gonna wing it. I'm just going to. Do I start with the colour? Yeah, why not? We've got it at hand. I'm just going to begin to pour that in, and hopefully these tabs are going to hold my resin in place long enough for me to get my clear resin to pour into the bottom. I mean, I think this is pretty genius. So I can now take my clear. I can see it just coming through the corner on that one, but it's still, I obviously didn't cut it quite square enough. So I'm just going to fill that up with my clear and then cure it under the beast. You want to keep an eye on the levels as well. Obviously you don't want one side higher than the other. Once that has cured, we can just take our scissors. Whilst it's in the mould still, just be careful, we don't want to damage your mould, and snip off those tabs. Then, I mean, if you wanted to get the snips closer to the resin, you could take it out and do it, but why not just keep it in there, and then I can back that with whatever colour I want. So I'm just going to dust the clear with a different colour nail powder, like so, just to break it up a little bit more and add a bit more colour. Might as well brush it all. It's not going to show through, I doubt. If it does, it might be cool. As always, massive shout out to my channel members, anyone who's bought me a coffee or a super thanks, and to all my subscribers, thank you very much. And again, as always, I've just got a small amount of black mica powder mixed in with some UV resin, not too much because we want it to cure, and just give that all a backing and another cure under the lamp. Now, because I can still see those tabs, because I didn't take it out and cut them straight to the resin, I can just back it again just to hide them a little bit better. It hasn't really made much difference because those tabs were sticking up a little bit too high. Anyway, you can tweak this. And what you can also do is colour the tabs so they blend in more. But, I mean, if I was to give that back just another cover, it wouldn't really show. You can just see that light coming through those clear tabs. But I think possibly taking it out, cutting them down and then back in with the black would have been better. But you can see it works really, really well as like a barrier, and it becomes one with the resin. It's not going to separate the, you know, it's as strong as if it was done in one pour. So, I mean, that in itself, here's one that I made yesterday. And it's just, I think that's a great a great little trick. So now I want to try a different idea that I've had. I haven't tried this one yet. And what I've done is I've just made some more of the paper, but using a nail powder in the UV resin before spreading it. It's the same one that I just used for the keychain. And what I want to see is, you know, if I could like lay these on the back of fresh resin and kind of create something I've not seen done before. You could do it by masking off your resin, I suppose, but I just want to see how it comes out with laying these strips in like a formation. I suppose you could go with lots of different angled layers. Let me just show you what I mean. I think we'll go with this heart. So I'm going to fill that with my UV resin, then taking my strips, I'm just going to lay that over the top. I'm not too worried if they're not straight. Let's make them a little bit random. And if we overlap them, I don't know whether we could, because the resin is not really going to get in between the layers unless I dip it, which I suppose I could do, but that would intensify the colour. Let's try it. I just dip a couple of areas where I think they're going to touch. Try and get them to spread out underneath the films. I'm calling them films, papers, resin papers, because I want them to become invisible. And if there's any trapped bubbles, it's not gonna work the way I want it to. So I think that would do, and just as an experiment. This is really exciting. I love playing around with stuff like this and just seeing where it goes. So I'm going to take this out now just to inspect it. I mean, just to kind of get an idea of where could this go. So obviously, because the back isn't covered with resin yet, it's going to still stand out, but you can see those concentrated areas where the nail powders are in those strips. And again, these are easy to just cut off. So now what I'm going to do is cut the tabs off and then back it with a secondary nail powder. And don't throw away these tabs, because you can always use them in other projects. You can hide them in black layers of resin. Don't waste them. I'm just going to dust the whole back with a blue. I don't think it's going to stick to the strips very well. I don't know, it is. It is going on the strips as well, which is surprising. I was expecting that to just brush straight off. Where's this going to go? You could create some really cool like lattice effects. It's like a band-aid. So this is what it looks like before backing. Now, I'm hoping that's not going to be an issue where I went kind of touched it with fresh resin on the back. I'm hoping that will just all blend in. Well, we're going to find out. And of course, see, this is where it could get interesting, because you could go in with different colors in different areas, if that makes sense. If you've got lots of different color strips, you could really tweak this into so many different color combos, formations, effects. I could, for instance, back this area with a black and a different area with a white if I wanted to. I mean, this is, again, resin paper, I think, is going to unlock a lot of different techniques for us. I mean, as a trial run, you see that blob has made an impact. You can see that reddish color just coming through. But I mean, it's different, isn't it? And for like a play around, I'm happy with that. What's not to like? It's crazy. I love the depth it's got as well. So when the paper strips were laid onto the resin, it's also pulled up the surface, like surface tension, which has given this 3D effect. So what I'm going to try and do now is not fill up my mold as much and use these strips to create a much more cushioned kind of 3D effect. I'm hoping you can see that on camera. I've left a good maybe 1 millimeter from the top of the mold. So now when I place on one of the strips, it should pull up. When it touches the resin, it should pull up the surface, which is going to give it a really 3D effect. And because these strips have pulled up the surface tension, the surface of the resin, the sides have dipped down. So I'm going to have to top it up. No, bubble. So the bubble wants to go and hide. Typical. Wants to go and hide under that strip. So I'm going to have to fish that out. That's a pain. Come on. Come on. There it goes. Okay, let's see what we've got so far. Let's see that. It's kind of created a dip in the middle. Again, it did pull away quite a bit from the side, so I mean, I'll try and make it good. So I'm just going to repeat what I did with that other one, but I'm using a different color nail powder for the back. I mean, I'm not overly fond of it. I had an issue as well because I forgot to put my mirror back under my mold, so it didn't cure through properly, and when I touched it, it made a little dimple. But again, it's just an experiment. The back's not finished perfectly. The depth, the 3D-ness, is that even a word? It's not enough for me, but it's still different. Sorry, it's starting to get a little bit messy here. I want to see whether I can use a strip. I've glued it, UV'd it. I'm coming out of all these new words today, aren't I? To a stick. I just want to see this. It's just to see whether the strip will be visible. I know I could just, if I wanted to, fill that with UV resin and cure it. But the test is to see if that strip will be visible in the resin after I've cured it in. So I'm just going to cure the end of that strip onto this little stone, like so. And I'll also see just how strong these strips are afterwards, because we could potentially make them wider to make them stronger. But if we don't need to make them wider, how strong would they be? So I mean, I could make a rig if I needed to for something bigger, a different project. But because it is just to see if the strip would be visible, I don't really need to make any kind of rig. I can just cut that off. And just begin to fill my tiny pyramid. In goes the stone on the strip. It's becoming invisible as it's sinking into the resin, which is good. That's what we want. And just fill that up to the top. Now what I noticed, as soon as I put the lamp on, the strip just flopped. It just wanted to flop over. I had to try and keep it. But obviously if it's glued to a stick, it's not going to do that. But yeah, it seems like as soon as the light hit the strip, it just wanted to, the heat, I think, just made it very, very soft. So is it going to be visible? Oh, just, but I think what that is it's micro bubbles. Let me try and zoom in. I mean, it's only if you really look, you can just see the light bouncing from it. I think those are absolutely tiny light bubbles. Come on, Dad. Tiny bubbles. But I think it would work. Can't really see it. I mean, it's a tiny pyramid and I'm zoomed right in. You can see the surface though. But that was, I think, mainly because I was trying to keep this afloat. So where I was kind of pulling it, I think the resin has come up slightly, but I think it could work. I'm gonna just see how strong it is just on this bloom coaster that I made. I've cut, again, similar size strip off. Just gonna stick that to the back and see if it would hold up this much weight. I doubt it, but you never know. Right, I don't want to put it at an angle, I just want to lift it and hold it if I can. Hello. Okay. No, I could see that just as I went to lift it, there was a tiny kind of gap in the resin. So I predicted that. Yeah, it's not that strong. Unless those were just weak parts, because that part is holding it. I suppose there's less tension. So it is fairly strong. And in all fairness, it's quite a big coaster. Now, for my next test, I've just cut up some of the red nail powder strips, and I'm just going to cut them just random shapes into this mixing pot, and then I'm going to make up some other colours and do it again and just mix them all up and put them in a piece. They're flying everywhere. I've got some tidying up to do. So I've just gone with 2 colours in there. I was getting a bit impatient. So I'm just going to mix that with some UV resin and I'm going to let it sit for a good 10 minutes to make sure there's no bubbles. And as I'm mixing them, of course, they've just become invisible. Here it goes. There are still some micro bubbles in there, but I'm not overly worried. Once I've poured that, I'm just going to give it another quick stir before blasting with the UV light. Just to definitely make sure they're mixed up. I'm hoping this gives us a really nice effect. Fingers crossed. Okay, let's inspect it before I decide if I want to back it. I think it's just going to be scattered colour at the moment. I think I'm definitely going to need to back that with a black and see what happens. Okay, I'm surprised at the outcome of that. It looks like the resin is black. It's really tricky to see. Well, you can see it, but it's not. I think I definitely needed to kind of cram it full of those snippets of colour. It's still pretty cool. So I think that brings us to the end of the experiment so far from this yesterday. I think that in itself is something that's really, really cool, to be able to divide using resin in that way and just cut it to the size that you need to kind of barricade your colours. It's quite a unique way of doing resin art. As for suspension, it works. It's slightly visible. I mean, I think, you know, it is doable. But I really like this. I love the way that this is just, again, it looks like a band-aid. But it's really different and it's cool. I like it. As always, give the video a thumbs up, drop me a comment. If you haven't subbed, hit that button. It is free, help the channel grow. I'm definitely going to experiment more with this in different ways. I just need to have less sleep and more ideas, I think. But let me know in the comments, what would you do with this paper, this resin paper? What would you create with it? Give me some ideas and we'll try them out. If you've got a channel, tag me. I'll come and see what you're doing with this stuff. And I will see you for the next one. Resin paper, genius. Bye for now.